Okay, so depend on the service you use, we will get bill for each service, and whether it is a regional service or the global service, we will get overall actually. Okay, any other questions, anyone?
Okay, so it does depend on the region.
Right, yeah, not always, but if it is a regional service, then you will get overall. So for each service, regional level, what is the cost?
Okay.
Okay, but if it is a
And
global service,
yeah,
then
I mean, it is. I mean, like definitely, it is understood that we have to, like how much space we have used and what kind of
right, right, yeah,
download and
the
upload we have.
configurations basically, yes.
Yeah, that configuration would be there, but definitely, I think there would be some price difference between different regions.
Right, that's right. Yeah, it depend on the price varies on the region to region as well, but not much, maybe few cents here and there.
So, how do we configure all this, and how do we like manage a particular project? Like, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
how do we decide what's
when we talk about the service, right? Then we will see those like what is the cost for each configuration you're gonna use and all. Okay, so
okay? Okay.
it varies on the service to service. Not all the services we get the same bill. It depends on the service to service. Okay. Okay, so we talked about the regions and availability zones and the data centers, right? Again, the data centers are nothing but the just the servers they manage, right? Where they have the hardware and everything they manage. So that is just about the data center. So we were talking about the edge location. So the main concept of the edge location is for the uh, caching actually. So so here, let's say someone stored a file in US region. We were talking about one example, right? So US region. If someone from India region try to access a file, okay? So let's say they accessing a file that sits on the US region, right? So what will happen is when the first person one or user one, so when he try to access, then what will happen is this his request will go all the way to US region and get the file. Okay, so if you use the edge location, so what will happen is you will get the file from US region and cached into the India region edge location. Edge location. Okay, so what is happening here, right? So the edge location main concept is for the caching. So when we do the caching, so if person to try to access, right? Let's say when person to access the same file, then what will happen is he'll get the file from the edge location wherever it is cached, right? The India region edge location. The second person will get the same file will get the when we try to request for the same file, he'll get the response from the edge location itself. The request will not travel to the US region and get the file. So that is the advantage of the edge location. So when we talk about the CloudFront service that uses the edge location, then we will talk more about the edge location. But think of like if you have a edge location, that is purpose of the edge location is for the caching. So they have the more number of edge location around the globe. And if someone access the file and if it is cached for some time, when second person try to access, it will be just get the response from the cached. So how your request is working here, right? So always whenever the request or if someone requests for the file, it will try to get your file from the edge location for that is nothing but the from the caching first. If it is not cached, then your request will travel to the US region wherever you file store. But in our example, it is a US region, right? So it will go to the US region, then it will again cached in the edge location, then you'll get the response. Okay, if so that caching is again for the some time, right? Maybe 1 day or 1 hour, or, depending on the your the dynamic. If the page is dynamic, the files will be automatically changes, right? If that is the case, then you will have the caching maybe 1 hour or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That depends on the your use case basically. But if it is not a dynamic, if it is a static page, it won't change. Then you can, what you can do, you can cache for the 1 day maybe. Then if someone access, then you will get the very fast, so the latency will be less at the end, the latency will be less. So that is the main advantage of the edge locations here. But anyone has any question so far on the global infrastructure here?
So Raj,
Mhm.
this edge feature that you said,
Hmm.
uh, is it a standard service or provisioning given by AWS, or do you have to subscribe to it separately as a
uh,
service?
yeah, so in some cases we have to subscribe actually, or we have to configure to use the edge location, for example S3. Okay, but if it is not the edge location, if you use the cloud front service, other services, then this will be automatically comes with that of that.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, in some cases we have to configure, in some cases it automatically enable. But definitely if you enable that one, then there will be some cost associated with it, right? So that we have to keep in mind. If you
Okay.
configure something, then we have to pay something for that, right? So that we have to keep in mind.
So this edge feature is basically associated with the S3 services.
Yeah, not only S3, there is a CloudFront service also,
Mhm.
where we use that is a CDN service actually, content delivery network service, where it caches the data.
Okay. So if I understand on a high level,
Uh-huh.
when you deploy any of these services, say S3 or the CDN service, the cloud front you say,
Hmm.
that time probably you get an option whether you want to use the edge caching or not.
Edge location or not, yeah. So in some cases, yeah, you have to configure, yeah, we will get the option to configure it or not, yes, of that. But yeah, how to configure that and all, we will see that going forward. But
Sure.
yeah, if you have to understand this very the
Yeah.
clearly, or we will talk about this one, then we will go back and see what we have covered till now. Okay,
Okay.
so the global infrastructure, infrastructure and services, right? So as I mentioned, so let's think of like you have a AWS account. Okay, in that AWS account, you will be having at high level, there will be the this regions. So if you see NV, that is a Northern Virginia US region, Ohio region, or Mumbai region. Okay, again, these regions are divided into the availability zones. Okay, so these availability zones are aged. So how they named, so we will not call with the region name. So these region names are tagged with some the region name to use within the AWS. Example, if it is a US region or Northern Virginia region, that is a US East 1A, US hyphen East hyphen 1A 1. If the availability zone, if they have named the availability zone as it is a US East 1A, right? 1, right? US East 1, that is the region name. Then the availability zone name start with the 1A, 1B, 1C, depending on the how many availability zones they have. The same way with the Ohio. So it is think of like US West 1. Then here the 1A, 1B, West 1A, 1B, 1C, something like this. That they have named. If it is a Mumbai region, right? Then again the 1A, 1B, 1C within the availability zone. So this is how they have their global infrastructure is divided. They have the in AWS account they have the regions, and within the region they have the availability zones. Okay, and within the availability zones they have the data centers, right? The depending on the their load, they have maybe 2 data center, 3 data center, 5 data center. We do not know how many they are managing in the background. So that is the data center. On top of this, along with these, we have the edge location also. Those are the globally divided, and with few services we can use the edge location. That is the main purpose of edge location, is for the caching the data to get the quicker response or low latency, you can say. Okay, any questions so far, anyone from the global infrastructures, right? Okay, I'll share my screen again. Okay, no questions, anyone?
You're sorry, this is Devyani here again.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Okay.
You are using latency word, so is it the bandwidth you're mentioning, or like, oh, what is it like? I want to know.
Okay, so it is basically so when you try to request some object, right, or the request and response time would be there, right? So how soon you are getting the object when you request for something, right? Let's say you want to try to browse a file, how soon you are getting the file, like the request and response time, right? That is the latency, right? So how quicker you are getting, that is the latency, basically, Divyan.
Okay.
Okay, so if it is in a US region, then you have to travel all the way through US region and get the file. And if you get the file from the India region, definitely there will be some quick or the low latency if you get the file from the your nearest edge location. So that's where we are talking about the latency. But
Okay, but why would I, like, if I'm here in India and I'm running a business, like if I have an application or like a mobile application, and I want my all the data, like whoever are the users of that particular applications,
Mhm.
to be in India only. Why would I
Right, that's right. So if you
have in
so
US? Yeah.
right, right. So if you have a global infrastructure, right, then we are talking about this one. Okay. If you have a Mumbai region or if you have a only India customers, right, then not that is not useful actually.
Yeah, so Devani, just to add to that, yeah.
Hmm,
So suppose your customers are spread across globe, yeah,
that's
and
right.
especially those are in say US region or say Europe region, yeah.
Right.
Then for GDPR norms, sometimes it is required to host it on different regions,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
basically, if your application is distributed globally, then it is useful, Divyani. Okay. Okay, if it is in India, then you will be not using the edge location because you have the nearest the region or your data centers will be very near to you for your customer basically. So you may not be using the this edge locations more on that side. But if your application distributed across globally, right, you have the customers from the Sydney region, US region, India region, then it is useful to cache the data at your nearest edge location to get the maybe first user may get the more latency, maybe 10 second, maybe in the next user may get in the within the 5 seconds, right? So that's where we are talking about the if your application is distributed globally, then it is useful.
So these edge locations are randomly allocated depending on what kind of application I have, or is it like, we can decide on that, like, okay, mine is a global application, so I will need one server here in US, one server in Sydney, one in Europe, and one in India, something like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So
edge locations are like randomly picked up by AWS on its own.
yeah, AWS has the some edge locations around the globe. Actually, they have more so many data points around the globe. Within the region, they have 5, 10, depending on the load. Actually, so that is randomly allocated. But to your question, so we will be not creating those many servers around the globe. Actually, it is just to cache the data, not to create the service.
Okay, got it.
Okay, just for the caching purpose. That's all. Okay, so let me. Okay, so this is the link I'm gonna provide to you. So here, what you can do is, so you can. So this is the link I'll be providing in the this link, this URL basically. So you please go through this link, the global infrastructure here. So here, these are the regions. If you see this color, right, like in green
I
color.
don't think I can see your
So
screen.
we can't see your screen.
Okay, sorry. Let me. Okay, let me know once you see my screen back, please.
Yeah, we can see now.
Okay,
No, we
so
can see.
this is the URL. I'm gonna provide this. I'll make sure I'll be providing this URL to you guys, right? So this is the global infrastructure. So this is how the regions are distributed. If you see here, right, light and green color here. So these are the presents or whatever the present currently. and these are the coming soon. So maybe Hyderabad region may be coming soon from this list. So if you see launched in 2022, but it is not yet active. So Mumbai, when these are activated or when these are came up, so they have started with few at the start, then they came up with the uh, later part of the time. They have so slowly. If you see, right, so this is the AWS base region is this one. Where is that? California. This one, yeah, Northern Virginia. If you see here, right, 2006, we talked about the when they have launched and all, right. So in the 2006, they have came up with the few services that is in US region, right. So this is the their base region, Northern Virginia region. So if you hover over on each region, right, so how many availability zones each region has, right? What is the local zones they have, and these are the basic info, but from this one you have to get how many availability zones. So this is the big region you can think of, like, or this is their base region. So if they want to launch a new service, or if they want to test the service, they will launch the service within this region first, Northern Virginia region. So at some point of time, few services may be available in one region, may not be in other region, right? So how do you verify, right? So here, if you go to this one, AWS regional services, if you select your region here, then it will show you what all services available within this region. Okay. So here, if you select the region, right, maybe if you go to the next region, the may not be the service will be available in other region. Okay. If they are testing, then the services will be available within this region. But if it is, it may not be launched into the other region yet. So that's what you have to understand. So you may not see all the services in all the regions yet. Some services available in some region and some may not be available in the other region. But how do you verify what services available? You can go to the your AWS account, you can verify, or you can go here and select the region drop down here. So this is how these the regions mapped here. If you see US East, N Virginia, Northern Virginia, US East one, this is how we identify our region name, US East one. US East, again Ohio region, in East only, US East only, they have two regions. US East 2. So this is the unique identifier for the region to identify. At some point we will be, so you see here Asia Pacific, AP South 2, Hyderabad region, and somewhere they'll be having the Mumbai region. So they have some Gov Cloud region also. These are the government cloud within the US. So it may not be available within the drop down from us, for us actually. Um, so it will be available within the ES region. And if you see here Mumbai region, so South 1, if they have next region, then they'll mark it as the AP South 2. Yeah, AP South 2. So this is the unique identifier within the their or in the AWS account maybe. Okay, so the edge network location, right? So this is what we talked about. They have the edge network location for the caching purpose, right? So okay, so any questions so far? We will jump into the next. So does anyone have the AWS free account? Anyone?
I had an account. I earlier did some training.
Uh, is that Girish?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So
community.
okay.
That was in community. Yeah.
Mhm. So what AWS will provide is AWS provides the 1 year free tier account where we can use for a few services. We can create and test the services for 1 year. But there are not, may not be all the services are for free, but going forward I'll let you know what all services for free, and some of them are not free. So first thing, as a first step, what you have to, so till now what we discussed, we have discussed about the history of the AWS. So that may not be important, but you have to have the good clear idea of the what is the global infrastructure, right? So what is the region availability zone, then the data centers, then the edge location. So that's all we have discussed now. But now we will slowly jump into the AWS console, and we will see how to create the first AWS free tier account, right? So free tier account, AWS provides the 1 year free service, or you can you can create or do the POC within the AWS account for 1 year. So that's where we're going to create a free tier account, and I'll show you all the options to create the free tier account here. The prerequisites for the create a free tier account, you should have a one Gmail ID where you can log in and do the verify your email address and all. Okay, so here let me, so this is the link. I'll make sure I'll be providing this link also, or you can search for the AWS free tier account. So here, create a free tier account. Then you have to provide the so here it is asking for the root user email address, right? So we are slowly jumping into the AWS perspective, guys, so please pay attention here. So root user credentials are nothing but the, when you create a AWS account, you should have a email ID and password, or you should have a at least email ID, and you can generate a password after that, right? So this email address is very important, because of if you want to do anything with the AWS account, then you should remember this email address and password. So if you are able to log into your email address, or if you know the email address password, please use that. Okay, let me give mine. I already have an account, but let's see. Okay, so account name, this is the within your AWS account, so you can give any name here. So verify email address, let's see. I already have an AWS account with this email address, but let's see. So it is saying the email specified is already associated with it. So let me try to give one more email address in a second. Let me go back. I'll try to create with a one free tier the one more email address where I can log in. I just wanted to show you all the options here. So there will be one the MFA code will be sent to your email address. You have to enter that. So let me enter 40421. So here root user password. Okay, so again this is important. So when we go to the IAM the next service, then why this root user is important. Okay, so you should remember the password, email address and password here. Okay, continue step 1 of 5 here. The password publicly known through a dataset leak. Please try a different password. Let me try. So you have to make a strong password there. Then here you have to provide the your contact information actually. So mark it as the personal. So this is just for the personal account, not for the business. So mark it as personal. Then your give your full name here. Then type for India here and give the phone number. Let's see. Maybe let's see. Country or region. India. Then you have to give the address here. Yeah, Hyderabad. Let's see. Okay, now here this is the important step, guys. So here you have to provide your credit or debit card number. So generally it will debit around 5 rupees, I guess, and they'll pay you back. But yeah, just to verify the whether it is the correct or not, they'll debit some amount and they'll credit it back to you. Okay, then you have to provide the right details here and same contact details, and that's all. Next, verify and continue, and you will be creating the AWS free tier account. So with this, the once you do the next step, then do you have PAN? You can say no, and you don't need to give here, right? And that's all. You verify and continue. You do this one, and they'll debit some amount, and your account will be created here. So once this account is created, then how do you log in, right? So if you remember while setting this up, if I can go back to the previous step here. So at the start, I have given the root username and password, right? So that is the your login account username and password for the first time. So if you log into your AWS account, right, using those credentials, you can log in. So you can type AWS account login. And here I can say sign in. Okay, here there is a option root user or the IAM user. So if you say root user, right, here you have to provide your uh, the here you have to provide your email address here. Okay, let me. So you have to say next. So here you have to type the password, whatever we set there, right? You have to give the that password here. Okay, so I have what assigned a MFA device. So here you have to give the password, then it will log in. So I'll get.
Hey Raj, you are not audible, I guess.
Oh, okay, yeah, mic is far away. So yeah, so once we jump into the console, right? So this is how it looks. So I log in a second there using the MFA device, but here. So if you log into the AWS account, this is how it looks. So we are talking about the regions, right? So this is the region drop down here, the right hand top, and on the right hand side, you can see your account ID. So once you successfully create your free tier account, right, there will be a 12-digit account will be assigned to you. That is a unique 12-digit account number will be assigned to everyone whoever creates the AWS account, right? There is a 12-digit account number will be created there. And how do you verify your 12-digit account number? So once you click on your name here, you can verify that. So let me go back to that screen where I'm waiting for the web app. Just a second, it looks like. So in real time, we will while setting this up, then only we will use the root account, but we generally use the IAM user within that. Just a second. Okay, yeah, now I am able to successfully logging in within the uh, using the root user credentials here. Okay, so this is the name you can see when while setting up it asked for the some name, right? So this is the name you can see, and this is your unique identity or unique identifier or the account ID you can see here, and you can see few information here. Now this is the regional drop down here. So this is the region you can set or you can search for. So by default, as I mentioned, Northern Virginia will be the their base region. So by default, it will comes up with this region. But if you work on the Mumbai region or other region, then if you log in for the next time, it will automatically comes up with the this region. Okay, so these regions are not yet active. As I mentioned, right, the Hyderabad region is not yet active into the AWS console. So these are the regions currently available. Okay, so I mentioned, right, so let's say some, so the here two ways to search for the service. Okay, if you click on this search bar or the search text box, you can search for the any one of the service, let's say S3, right? So you can search for the S3 service here, or you can know any other service, you can search for that particular service here and you can go there. The one more way is here, click on the services, and here all the services are grouped by the their common usage here. Okay, if it is a storage, right, so if you click on storage, it will comes up with the all the storage services here. If you, let's say, if the database, if you know any service, then you can go with the all these are the database related services. Okay, so based on their usage type, all the services are grouped by the those usage pattern here. Okay, if it is a database, then it will be here, or if it is a compute service, it will be into the compute type here. Okay, if you do not know the group, or if you know the service name, you can directly search for here, let's say EC2, that is a compute service, right? Now you can click on this one and it'll we can go to the right service here. Okay, so now you have to observe one thing here. So once I searched for the EC2 service, right, it give me the regional drop down here. It is enabled. It is nothing but the it is a regional service. Okay, but if I go to the different service here, let's say IAM service, right? So if I go to the IAM here, you observe one thing here. So you see here it is a global, right? So if I go back to the this service EC2 service, it is a regional service, Northern Virginia region. You can create service in any one of these region, but yeah, by default, when I select the Northern Virginia, it will comes up with that. But if you go to the this service, this is a global service, right? So these are not, if you see, these are disabled. The regions are disabled. When you say global, this is a single service, or it is not the regional based service. So within the account, you can create a same in one time. Let's say I want to create a username with let's say Rajkumar, then I can create a service or create a IAM user here with the same name. I cannot create the same name with the in the other region, because it is not a regional service, it is a global service, right? So that is what we are talking about here. So if it is a in AWS account, there are at the global service level or at the regional service level. Some services are the global, example IAM, right? We have seen in the console, this is a global service. We cannot create the IAM at the regional service. It is a same within the your AWS account. The complete AWS account IAM service is same. So that's where it is a global service. But some services are at the regional services, maybe Northern Virginia, Ohio, or Mumbai region. So these are some services, let's say EC2 we have seen, right? That is a regional service, right? And some we can create some services or few services within the availability zones also, but we will see that is it more the deeper level. But yeah, you think of like some services are at the regional level or the global level or account level, you can say. Okay, any questions so far? Anyone, any confusion?
Raj, are you going to share any documents, maybe the ones that you're sharing right now, or
Yes, I'll be going
PPT
to do
or
that.
PowerPoint slides or anything?
Yes, I'll be doing that.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay, so we will as we jumped into the console, we will see the first service into the AWS, that is a IAM. Okay, so this is the important service because so how do you manage or how do you give your access to the each one of the user right within the AWS? So this is where we will be managing the IAM. Okay, so IAM stands for the identity and access management. You see, right? Access management. And within this, we will be talking about the users here. So IAM user. So that is what we have seen to the console, right? So here, if I go to the login here, the users. Okay, so these users are nothing but the users which you have created, or you or me, right? Or any user, or the organizational user you can think of. When we say organizational user, let's say within your organization you have 10 users, right? You will be creating 10 users within the for your AWS account usage, and you will be providing the username and password to them. Okay, so can anyone tell me, like, why don't we use the root user which we created? Why don't we share the root user? Okay, so maybe the root user, right? The root user is only purpose is the root user to give or manage the let's say you have a billing related, right? The root user may be logging in or the managing the billing related stuff. But the IAM user at the or the IAM user, they will be managing the services and all, right? So that is the IAM users work. So we will not be sharing. So no one can be sharing the in real time the root user credential. No one will be knowing that within your organizational users. The only admin or whoever the responsible for the account, they will be having the root credentials. Otherwise, the employees will be using the IAM users only. How to create those users, we will see that. Okay, so if you say user is nothing but just an identity. Think of like a employee within the organization. Okay, if you have 10 employees, then you will be creating, think of like 10 users for the each one of them. Okay, then we will talk about the user groups here. So groups are nothing but the user group, right? The user group is nothing but the group of users basically. So what is the main purpose of the group of users is the assigning the permission. So you create a user, you have to assign the some permissions, right? Let's say we will understand from this diagram here. So let's think of like you have a the developer group. Okay, so they will be having only few permissions, right? Then they do not need the whole AWS account permission. So we will assign only least privileged permissions here. Least privilege permissions here. Let's say you have an audit team, same way you have operations team, or you have the temporary users, right? Maybe you will be not having the group created there. So you just think of like user is nothing but an employee or the organizational user group is group of users. Okay, so what is the advantage here when you create a group, right? So instead of managing permissions at the user level, if you have a group, if you assign the permissions to a group, all the users within that group will be inherited. The permissions are inherited from the group itself. Okay, it is easy to assign the permissions at the group level, right? Rather than the assigning the permissions at the individual user level. So that's where we create a group and assign the permissions there. So how to create the user and user group, we will see into from the console. But anyone has any questions? So what is the user or the user group here? The same way we have created a root user, right? The same way we can create a IAM user also. Just a second. Okay, so we will jump into the console and we will see here. So I'll let me go to the services and I'll search for the IAM. Okay, this is the short name of IAM, and again IAM stands for the identity and access management here. Okay, so once you search for the IAM here, they manage access to AWS resources, right? Once you click on this IAM, or what you can do is you can click on this and it can add to the favorites here. Let me show that, and let me go to the IAM service here. Okay, here IAM, then this is the dashboard. So we are talking about the users here, right? So let me create a user. So here it will pop up for the users, but let me click on create user here. So you can think of like the users are nothing but the members of your organization. Okay. So username, so you can give any username here, or you can, if you have the 10 employees, you can create the username with their name. So this is just to identify what purpose we have created a user here. So maybe demo user 2. Okay, so here there are few options of how we can log into the AWS console, right? So here provide user access to the AWS management console. So when we say AWS management console, AWS management console is this one, the user interface, right? So this is how, this is the AWS console if you see here, right? So this is the AWS management console. So once you tick for this one, then you have to provide the what is the password for this one. Okay, so here you have to create a IAM user for now. Okay, you can use the auto generated password here, or you can customize your own password here. So here demo user 2. So let me give you some here you can create a auto generated password, and user must create a new password in the next sign in required, but I'll be not taking this one. So I'll just create a custom password for now. Demo user 2. Okay, and I'll click on next. Here this is what we are talking about, right? Add user to group. Okay, so if you have any group here, you can add this user to the group. Okay, I'll show you what is the advantage here. So let me click on the create a user group here, and group name is same as demo user 2 group. Okay, I created a just a group name it is, then the permissions, right? So here the permissions policy, this policy is nothing but the permissions we will be assigning, right? So what this user should have a access to, let's say I'm giving the full permissions for now, but we will minimize that in a second. Okay, create group. Now you have created a group. Okay, I'm giving the permission here. So here there are few options you can assign the permissions. The permissions are nothing but the user what he can do within the AWS account, right? You can do the copy permissions directly if you have the or copy the permissions from the other users directly, or the attach the policies directly. So if you see these symbols, right, these are the AWS managed one. If you see this yellow symbol here, right, this is the AWS managed policy. It is indicating the AWS managed one. But if you so if anything, right, if it is a customer managed, if you write your own policy here, those are the customer managed. And you see here there is no symbol here. So this is how they have segregated. If you create, there is no symbol will be comes up with that. But if it is a AWS managed one, then there will be a symbol comes up with it. Okay, I just let me add a policy from group. So this is the group which we have added. Okay, then next.
Hello, sir. Actually, I have a hard stop here. I have some very important work, so I'm dropping off. I'll check the recorded version later on, and we'll join back in the next class.
Okay. Sure, Divani, but yeah, please go through the today's topic, okay? And
Yeah,
please
sure, sir.
create a free tier account, okay? If any difficulties, then please post the question in the WhatsApp group so that I can respond immediately.
Okay, sir. Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Divani.
Nice meeting you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Then yeah, review and create. Then just create a user. So now what you can do, let's say you have a new user created or a new member joined within your team, then you can share the username and password here. Okay. So these are he can log into your AWS account using these credentials here. So now you have created a user, right? Like now how can you have to share the what is the console login sign in URL here, and username and password. If you share these three, If you share with anyone these three info here, then they can log into your AWS account and they can do whatever the permissions you have given. So how do you check what permissions we have given, right? So that is the policy. We'll talk about policy in a second, but just, let me go to the users here again. Okay, so problem here is so there is a what you can do. So I logged into the using the root account, right? Then what will happen if I try to log into this user? The previous session will be logged out automatically. So at a time, only one user can be logged into your AWS account within the same browser. If you want to log into the different one, let's try this. Maybe incognito. Then copy this URL. Then you see here it is automatically logged out now. Okay, let's see. Sign in. Cross folder wait. Let me give the user to the whatever the user you created, right? You have to see if I remember the password correctly. Okay. Yeah, now you're logged into the your AWS account using the demo user too, which we created now, right? So demo user at the rate this. So this is the IAM user now. But if you see or if you remember from the earlier, there'll be only account ID. There is no IAM user, right? So two ways you can log in. One is root account. That is not at all suggested. Okay. So from the AWS end or in the exam perspective, if someone asks you if you can use the IAM root account for the regular day-to-day work, then you say no. Instead, we have to create a IAM user and we have to use the IAM users. Okay. Now let's go back to the IAM here. Okay. IAM. And see the permissions, what are the permissions assigned to the RIM user, right? So let's see that users here, demo user. Then
From where? Yeah, just one question. From
uh-huh.
where you created a group? You created group
Yeah,
similar
you
to
can,
users?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can
Okay.
create here also,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
create group and assign the permissions here. Or
Okay.
else while creating a user also, you will get a option here. Okay,
Okay.
let's say some new random name.
So Raj, initially we have to create a group or a user from the root account only, correct?
No, no, not needed actually.
Okay.
Okay, so here you have to give the custom password here. If you have the right permissions to your IAM user, right? So that's where we will talk about the policies next. If you have the right permission for your IAM user, then this IAM user can create a one more IAM user.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just
Okay.
trying. I have just given random password. Anyways, we do not gonna create.
Raj, on that note, might sound silly, but then can you create an IAM user that has exact same privileges or permissions as the root user?
IAM user with the same privilege you're saying?
Yeah, same privilege as root user.
We can do that. Avdut. Okay, so here while creating IAM user, right? Someone asked from where did we create the group, right? Here you have the option. Here you can create a group. So while assigning the permission, you have an option here. You can create a group and assign the permission. Okay. Now, what is the advantage over the or why do we create even group, right? So let's say you have the 10 users, okay, and for each 10 users, maybe for the same purpose or different purpose, right? Then what you have to do, you have to manage the permissions at the user level. 10 policies you have to assign. Okay, let's say you have a two group of user, maybe developers and the operations team. Okay, so you will be having same set of permissions for the both are five users, right? So what you have to do, you have to assign the or you can create a group and you have assign the permissions at the group level and assign or just or add these all these five users into one group, dev group, and other five into the operations group, so that you don't need to manage 10 times permissions. Now you can manage only two times. at the group level. That is the advantage over your users and group. So group is nothing but the just group of users, and you can assign the permissions at the group level, and whoever be part of that group, all users will be inherited. Those permissions are inherited from the group level. So that is the advantage. Okay. And so here what I wanted to show you is, while creating a group, we have assigned some permission. So uh, you have to remember this policy name, administrator access. This is the highest privilege within the AWS. This is a AWS managed policy. So it has the full access within the AWS, except the billing, everything is allowed here. So you can do pretty much same as the root user within using this policy. If this policy is assigned, then you can do this one. Okay. Now what I'll show you is, let's say we have created a group, right? Let's say this group, demo user to group. Now let's permissions. Let's remove this permission. Okay. Let's remove the permission from here. Now, so what we have done, we have created a user. We have assigned to the this group, user to group, demo user to group, and we have removed the permissions. So it doesn't have, the group doesn't have any permissions attached to it. So does anyone guess, if I go to the any other here, what will happen? Any guesses, anyone? If you see here, there is a earlier we have seen the users list, right? Now it is access denied. This is because of we do not assign any permissions to our user group here. Okay, any questions, anyone here? So
Suraj,
this is a different user. Yeah, good.
can you integrate Active Directory along with the users or the IAM roles here in AWS?
Can we integrate AD?
Active Directory AWS.
Right, right. Yeah, we can do that, but that is a bit different process than this. Whatever we are seeing, Advat, I know it is very advanced topic, so we may be leading to the different
Yeah,
way.
it's just a question. I mean, I don't want
Uh,
to know how to do it, but just a
yeah,
question
yeah, we
because
can do that. We can do
a
that.
lot of customers usually ask, they want to integrate their organizational AD users and groups into the third-party applications, like
Yeah, we
AWS,
can do that. We can do that.
and then probably single sign-ons to log into the
Right, right.
to
Yeah,
the group.
generally we in the organization we do the SSO only, right? So we can do
Right.
that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. Now, if you see here, it is we are getting here because we do not have the any permissions here. Okay. So let me add the permissions back here. Okay, add permissions.
Yeah,
So
I have a question here.
uh,
Actually, by default, what permissions do we get once we create the user?
no, we will get nothing. So once you create a user, right, then you have to assign some
Okay.
permission. It will by
Okay.
default. So you think of like by default, it will get nothing. You
Okay.
have to assign the permission. So the recommendation from AWS is you have to assign the least privileged permissions. Okay, let's say you have a development group. They use only, let's say, S3 bucket. Okay, you do not go ahead and give them the full access. Rather than what you have to give only S3 permissions. Okay, because if you know what they're gonna access or what is the purpose of their job, you're gonna assign the permission based on their role itself.
Okay.
Okay, if there is an operation team, so if it is an operation team, they need to access pretty much everything within the AWS, right? Then you can give a administrator access. Let's say a DB team, what you have to do, you have to give only DB related access only. So that's how you have to create a group and assign the permission at group level, and you can assign or you can add the group users into that group. That is a users and user groups. You see the difference between users and group, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so we can manage the permissions at the user level or the group level as also. Now let me give the policy back. to the group, our group, we have removed the permission here, right? Here, what you have to do, add permissions, attach policy, and I'm giving the first one here. Okay, now if you go back to the other screen, right, where we are getting the access denied error, if you refresh this one, now you see, you can see the user groups now, users now, you can do pretty much everything. It is because of the policy which we attached here, right? The permissions which we attached here. Because of this, we are able to log in now. So everything here within the AWS, it works on the whatever the permissions you're gonna assign, or the whatever the permissions each user or each group, whatever you are accessing, it should has the right permissions to access the services, other resources, you can say. Okay, so we will briefly talk about the permissions now. So we have seen in the console, but yeah, these permissions are nothing but the or in AWS term, it is a IAM policy, but these policies are nothing but the permissions. So when we say permissions, what level of permissions you are assigning to the or accessing? Let's say you're creating a IAM user, and that user should have what level of permissions to access your resources. Maybe one service, two service. You can narrow down to the minimum permissions. That's what AWS suggests. Give the least privilege permissions. You have to remember this word: least privilege permissions are to access within the your AWS account. Okay, you cannot go ahead and give, let's say, one user, let's say they wanted to access one service. You cannot give them the 10 service access, right? You have to narrow down to the minimum permissions only. That's where it is a least privilege access. Okay, so how do you manage these privilege or permissions to the user, right? That is using the IAM policies here. So these policies are JSON documents. So these JSON documents are just a key value pairs here, and we will see a policy structure with from this slide. Okay, and these policies are nothing but permissions only, right? These policies can be assigned to users or the users groups as also. Okay, so we have seen user groups, we have assigned a policy. Let's see how can you assign the permissions to users also, right? So this is our user, and if you go to the permissions tab, add permissions, here you can add a permissions directly. You can add it from the group or attach the policies directly here. So we have this one already there. So maybe I am some any other policy you can add. Click on next and add permissions. If you go back to your user, now you see the two permissions here added, are two policies in IAM terms. The two policies are added here, right? So these both are the AWS managed one, right? So we will understand how to write this JSON document, right? Or this policies are permissions. Okay, so we will increase this one. So this policy structure, right? So we have added attached two policies now, right? So if you expand this one, now you can see the what is the policies are doing here. So this version is common. So this is straightforward coming from the AWS end. So we do not worry about this one. You always see the what statement you have added here. So within this arrow, you can add the multiple statements here. So this statement, as it is a AWS management, we cannot modify this one. You see only copy JSON, but you can edit this one. If it is a customer managed one, we will see how to edit this one, right? So if you see this JSON policy, right, structure, right, it will comes with the version first. So this version is again coming from the AWS, and this is the default version you can think of. You cannot modify that one. Then the statement is nothing but the group of permissions here. The statement could be one or more than one also. At least one you have to provide within the statement here. Again, this is the statement ID. That is again the optional, or you cannot. That is just a, let's say if it is a what, you can add the what is the statement ID. It is maybe what this statement is doing all about. The important thing here is within the policy is effect, action, and resource, EAR. You have to remember this. These three are important here. The effect could be allow or deny. Maybe we'll add one permission here, but yeah, effect could be allow or deny. Allow means you are allowing something to use it, right? So maybe S3 service or IAM service. Allow let's say you are created a user and access them only IAM user. Then what you have to do? Effect allow, action is IAM. This is a service name, or if you say star, that is a wildcard. Everything, right? If you say something is star, it means everything, allow everything. So if you see this policy, if you understand this correctly, allow, action is star. These are the API calls within the service here. The AWS services here are resources. Then the resource could be, you can narrow down to the particular resource, or the, if you say star, everything, all the services. Action is all the API calls. Allow here, it means allow every API call within the AWS. This is how you have to read the what this policy is doing, or what permissions you are giving here. So you can add a policy here. Here you can have the two choices here, right? One is you can attach the permissions directly, which is available directly, or you can create a policy here. Click on create inline policy here. Here you have two options again. You have the visual editor here. You can select what permissions you need. Let's say we are talking about S3, right? Let's say here. So we are talking about the narrowing down or least privilege here, right? Effect is allow or deny. Allow or deny. Only two options here. So if you see here, actions are allowed or denied based on the your selection here. Allowed, actions are allowed, actions are denied here. So let's say allow. Here, if you put all actions, right, it is a S3 star. It means everything with the S3 service, right? S3 colon star. If you say S3 colon star, S3 is the service name. This service, everything within the service. Or you can narrow down to the list this S3, or read, let's say read. Okay, all read actions. Then you can say specific, or if you have 10 S3 buckets, you can narrow down to one S3 bucket or 5 S3 bucket. Or if you say all, it means it will comes with the star here. We will see that. What is your policy name? S3 read access. Okay, if you see here S3 full read, what is this policy is doing? So it will generate a uh, uh, JSON code automatically. Now let's expand this one. Now, if you see, these are the API operation within the S3 service, but we will see what all these API operations are doing it. But if you see here, right, this is the policies automatically generated. Now, if you see here, you will get the edit option here. But if you go back to here, AWS managed one, you will not get the edit option. We cannot really edit their policy, right? You can policy, or if this can be edited, this might, because this policy will be using their across the AWS accounts, right? So we cannot edit this one. If it is a customer inline or customer managed one, you can edit this permissions or policies here. Okay, so one more way to add the permission here, right? Here, create inline policy. Here, if you know what all the API calls here, right? If you click on JSON, then it will give you a sample template here. The version is coming up, statement is there. The SID, you can modify this one, statement one, or allow or deny. You can put the action is, let's say, if you say you have to write it in double quotes here, let's say star, again double quotes. And if you put star, this is equivalent to administrator access policy we have seen, right? Or if you want to narrow down to, let's say S3 service, okay, or the EC2 service, right? If you see here included, and so if you go back to the next here, the policy will be automatically generated here. And again, it will say EC2 full access, and the resources are full. So this is how you have to read the policy. Okay, but the important things you have to remember from this JSON policy is effect. Effect could be allow or deny, right? The action is nothing but the API call you're doing to the AWS. It could be a single service, all services, or within the service, the few actions within the read, write access, or the list access within the service. That is the actions within the your the service level, or the within the AWS account itself. If you put star, it means everything. The resource is nothing but the particular resource, or the all the resources. If you put star, that is a wildcard. It is a full resource here. Okay. Any questions, anyone from here?
Raj, can you explain that action part again? I mean, I'm still confused between the action and result. because EC2 is a kind of resource, right?
Right.
So then, why are we putting EC2 under action?
Okay, so what we are doing here is so within the EC2 we can do so many things, right? I mean to say you can list the if you go to the EC2 service, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Here you go to the EC2 service. Within the EC2 service, you can list the instance EC2 instances available or VMs available within the AWS account. So that is one API call, right? Next one is you can create the EC2 instance, right? Right. One more thing you can do. The next thing you can do is you can delete the EC2 instance, right? So think of like these three are the API calls. Okay. You can narrow down to the, let's say you have to give the permissions to someone saying he can only read what are the EC2 instances available within the AWS account. You want to give that permission. Okay. Then what you have to do here, EC2, then list permissions only.
Mhm.
When you say this one, he can only read the EC2 instances, but he cannot create the EC2 instances or delete the EC2 instances, right? You have to narrow down to the those API calls also here. Or if you want to give the EC2 delete permission, right? So he can only delete the EC2 instance, but he cannot do the other API calls here. So to understand this, what API calls can be done here, then we have to jump. I mean, if you know the service level, right? Here you can launch the EC2 instance. It means you are creating a EC2 instance, right? And if you have the EC2 instance, then you can delete the EC2 instance or terminate the EC2 instance here. That is a delete operation here. So all these are related to API calls. Okay. So what we are talking about here is you can give the full permissions or you can narrow down to the particular API call, whatever you want to do with the AWS. Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I got it, but then I think we'll clarify more down the line.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. If needed, let me know. I can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's all right. Yeah.
Okay, so this is all about the policies here. So again, important terms here is effect, action, resource, EAR. Effect, action, resource. So in effect, you can do allow or deny. Action is what API call or what the service, or if you want to allow or deny on the particular service that you have to provide here. Resource is nothing but the what resource and the what resource level you want to do. Is it full access or particular resource, or you can do. So you said here EC2, right? Here then you can narrow down to the particular EC2 instance here, or within the full. If you want to give the full, then this is a full again. If you put star, it means everything. Okay. Now
So
we
can
talk.
you give some examples of resource in this specific scenario like EC2? For
Huh,
EC2, what will be the resources?
sorry.
So when you created the JSON script or the JSON file,
Uh-huh.
we actually said EC2 colon list. So what
Right.
is what is the kind of resources? Can you give some examples of resources in that specific scenario?
Okay. So okay, let me take the S3. Okay. So let me add the add permissions or create. Let me create one. Create inline policy. Okay. JSON. Okay, so let's say EC2 instead of S2, I have one S3 bucket created. So let me take the S3 full permission. Okay. Now resource, let's say star. It means you understood this, right? So allow everything within the S3, right? I put narrow down to the S3 star. It means only S3 services. Okay. Here,
Okay.
when you say resource, right? So let me go to the S3 service. I have some S3 service created. S3 buckets are created here. So when we say resources, let's say I think I have four S3 buckets currently. So you can, if you put the star, right, what
Mhm.
you're saying here is allow everything, all the S3 resources here. You put star here, right? But I want, if you have the multiple S3 buckets here, right? So let's say I have this S3 bucket. There will be a ARN will be created. That is a Amazon resource name here. If you go to the properties here, so Amazon resource name, right? If you see here resource, so if I put this one,
Mhm.
copied this one, and
Mhm.
if I go back to the previous tab here, and if I put this one, This is how it generally works. Okay. So what I'm saying, this S3 bucket do all the actions with, I'm narrowing down to the only one S3 bucket. Even though I have four S3 bucket, I cannot really do anything on the other three S3 bucket. It's here, first, third, and fourth. I cannot do anything with these three S3 buckets. Okay, but I narrowed down my policy to access. So if I assign this policy to my IAM user, right? Once he log into the S3 console, he can see only this S3 bucket, only this S3 bucket. He cannot really see the first, third, and fourth because of this, his level of permission here. Whatever the permission assigned to his user, right? He can see only this S3 bucket. He cannot really see the other S3 buckets here. So think of like if someone sees that are logged in with the user which this policy is attached, they'll think of like they have only one S3 bucket created, that is this one. Now you see, right? We are narrowed down to the level of permissions, right? It is very narrowed down to the single S3 bucket. Okay, within the single S3 bucket, again there will be so many actions, right? You can upload the file, and so we haven't talked about this one yet, but there are so many things you can do within the S3 bucket. How do you narrow down to minimum permission here? Again, these are the actions. Okay. Okay, you can only read the S3 bucket or delete the S3 bucket. So again, you have to narrow down the permissions there. So that is all you can do with the actions. Now effect is allow or deny. Actions are maybe list or read or write, whatever the permissions you want to do with this resource. Right? You got it now?
I got it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone?
Yes, you mentioned that na API calls.
Right.
Yes. What is the API calls and how can we use that calls?
No, API calls is so API calls we cannot use them, but whatever the actions we are performing within the AWS, right? So AWS will be performing some API calls. Like example here S3 bucket, right? So here create bucket, right? This create bucket itself a API call. So that AWS will managing that, but this create bucket operation is treat it as a API call. Okay. Now this one, select this bucket. I want to delete this bucket, right? This is again one more API call. Here, delete. Okay, this is one
Sure.
more API call, right? So these are the actions you can perform to the your S3 bucket.
Okay. How can we create these API calls, or we need to create this API calls?
No. API calls we cannot perform from our end. We can only UI. You have the UI right now. We have the console. You can perform the operations on the UI level. The AWS will be managing the API call, like the create API call, delete API call. They will be managing from the backend. Okay, but we can do only the UI level. The UI level you can create or delete actions. We can do from the UI side.
If
Mhm.
I think in command we can use command prompt. At that time, we can use these API calls.
Yeah, we have the command line also. We can have the some the same actions we can perform, but AWS will be taking care of the create or delete or those operations. AWS will be taking care. Okay, the same thing we can do using the CLI also.
Yeah.
Okay, that time also we have some commands to perform, but we will not be doing anything from the API end, but they will call these as all the API calls, maybe create a bucket or delete bucket or list bucket. So all these are the API calls they will make, right? So let's say, think of like you want to create a bucket, right? So you're performing some action here, right? So what is this action? What AWS will be taking care, right? So
Yes.
you want to create a create bucket. It is nothing but you are making some call only, right? So
Yes.
that is the API call. So if you want to do, or if you want to give the permissions only create bucket, that's where you have to manage within the actions. Those are the specific API calls you can do, or specific actions you can do. Right? That's all the actions here. The resources are, you can narrow down to the particular resource or all the resource if you put the star.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, anyone?
Can we have multiple statements in that SID which you have shown? It has just statement one only, right?
No,
So for
it
example,
is just
uh-huh.
an the what is the statement ID? Let's say so S3, you can say S3 permissions. Okay, so this is the description of the this whatever the statement you are doing. Okay, I can create. So
Okay.
you see, right? It is a arrow. Sorry, array. You can create a one more statement, right? Maybe it is a EC2 permissions, right? It is just a statement ID. This is just to identify if someone reads your policy, right? This is what is the purpose of this uh, policy, right? So this is just to identify, not for any use.
Okay.
Yeah. So here it may be EC2, and this may be EC2. You can narrow it down to the single EC2 or multiple EC2s here. Okay, you can add the multiple statements within the one policy here, right? This is array. You can
Okay.
add the multiple statements within this. Okay, but the important things here is effect, action, and resource. These three.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about the IAM users now, right? This password and all. So let's say I created one IAM user. No, okay. So let's think of like if that IAM user username and password is exposed, or let's say these are the known to the someone. They can log into my AWS account and they can do whatever they can. I mean, the whatever the policies assigned to that user, they can do pretty much everything, right? So how do you protect your IAM users, right? So again, this is a exam related topic. So here, how do you or put the strong password, right? So you cannot really put, let's say you created a AWS account, you cannot put your phone number. That is a pretty much guessable, right? Someone guessed your password and logged in, then you cannot do or until and unless you figure it out and you can delete, then you cannot do anything with that. If someone goes there and create a few resources there, then you will get the bill. They'll not be paying the bill, right? Whoever the root user account, they'll get the bills and all. So how do you protect your AWS account, right? So this is where go to the IAM here console and go to the accounts here, click on edit. Here you can customize your password. So this is where while creating the IAM user or root user, right, they are asking some, the upper letter case needs to be there, lowercase letter needs to be there, right? So here you can pretty much customize your password here. If you say customize your password 10 characters, required a uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, you can do pretty much, or you can do this one very strong password here. And what you can do is you can turn on the password expiration maybe 90 days. So what you have to do, every 90 days you have to rotate your password, so that your, even though your password is exposed, then after 90 days they have to guess for the new password and all, right? So this is you can do, and you can do here pretty much everything. But yeah, how do you protect your password? That is using the password policy here, right? Customize your password and you can protect your password. So again, this is I have kept into the slide. I am going to provide this one to you. So this is basically using the strong password policy here. You can customize your password using the strong password policy here. Okay. So one more way is to put the, so let's say, so how do we log into our IAM user till now, right? So that is using the, uh, so username plus the password. Okay, so let's say the username is guessable, or username maybe generally people will be creating with their name. The password, let's say you, this is also exposed. So how do you protect your password, right? The next step, along with this username and password, there we can do one more level of security, that is a MFA. If you remember from my I when I logged into my root user account, I have enabled a MFA here. So this is MFA. Does anyone know what is MFA stands for?
Multi-factor
Multi-factor authentication.
Right. So this multi-factor authentication is an the one more level of, think of like the second level of security, right? So here the username and, let's say someone knows the username and password, but they cannot really log into your MFA device and get the password, right? So this is a high level, or the security you are providing to along with your password here. So that's where if you the generally we use the Google Authenticator app here. to log into your root account. So at least you have to protect your root account. That's what AWS suggests actually. So when you create your free tier account, right, then it will be asking for the, or it will giving you a warning for the multi-factor authentication enable here. So it requires the second authentication factor in addition to username and password, right. So here, so now they have what they have to do. They have to know the username, password, and if MFA is not accessible, then they cannot really log into your AWS account here. So MFA stands for the, here it is, the multi-factor authentication here. So how do you enable the multi-factor authentication, right? Let's jump into the console again here. Go to the security credentials here. Here there is a multi-factor authentication. Okay, so again this is at the IAM user level, but I have assigned my MFA device at the root account level, right? But this is at the IAM user level. So if you see, you can assign the MFA at the root account level or the IAM user level as well. So here multi-factor authentication, so assign a MFA device. So generally you can do with the authenticator app. So generally we mostly use the authenticator app, everyone. Here you can provide the device name, maybe test, then the authenticator app, do next. Okay, MFA device already exists. Okay, so let's see. Okay, you see the with that name it is already exist. Okay, now what you have to do is you have to install the Google Authenticator app within your mobile, right? Then you click on show QR code. You have to scan this QR code with the Google Authenticator. Then there will be two codes will be come. You have to provide the code one. The two consecutive code needs to be provided and add MFA. So once this is done, then from the next time, along with your username and password, you have to give it'll ask for the MFA automatically. You have to provide the MFA to log into your root account. So I'll suggest create this MFA or add this MFA to your root account credentials at least, not to the IM user, but to the root account.
So this step will basically integrate your mobile device uh, with the MFA on AWS, right?
Right. Yeah, you can install the Google Authenticator into the mobile, and by logging into the AWS console, it is secured right now.
Hmm.
Even though your password is exposed, but they cannot really access your mobile phone for the MFA code. So it is not exposed now really. Even the password is exposed, they cannot access your AWS account, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So I'll suggest add the MFA device to your root account at least. Okay. Now we will talk about the. So we have talked about the IAM users, user groups, and the policies, right? And how to protect the IAM users, right? Are basically AWS account. Protect your passwords, right? Now we will talk about how do you access your AWS account, right? Now there are three options you can access your AWS account. Maybe I'll go to this slide here. So how can we access our AWS account, right? There are three options basically. The first one is management console, AWS management console. This is what we have used till now, and that is the using the username and password, right? Along with the MFA if it is enabled, right? If it is not MFA enabled, just a username and password. Username, password, and the along with the MFA if it is enabled. The second option is the CLI. CLI is nothing but the from our Windows machine, right? You can install the CLI into your local, and from here you can access the AWS account. That is using the access key ID and the secret access key. This is basically access key. So we will see how to generate the access key and secret access key for the our IAM user. The third option is the SDK. SDK is nothing but the software development kit. So this is just to access the AWS account programmatically. So the programmers can access the SDK, but this is at the high level. But as of now, we have seen the management console, but we will see the CLI also in a second. But anyone has any questions so far?
No.
CLI
Okay.
will be directly through command prompt, or we
Yeah,
have to
command
download something?
prompt
Oh,
you
command
can.
prompt. Okay.
Right. So first, before that, you have to install the AWS CLI into
Mhm.
your local. Then you can directly connect to your AWS account from the command prompt.
Okay.
Okay. So I have put this MSI installer here, and I'll be providing this from this link. You can directly download the MSI installer, and how to verify the how to verify the AWS version and all we will see. But if no one has any questions, so we will extend. I said 4, right? But as due to some interruption, right, we will be extending few maybe 15 minutes today. So let's take the short break, maybe 10 minutes today, and we'll get back. Okay. But anyone has any questions, please ping in the group chat here.
Are we joining back on the same link?
Yes, yeah. Do not drop. Just put it in mute and
Okay.
go back and come.
Okay.
So we'll resume it.
Okay. So let me hear. So we are talking about the accessing the AWS account, right? So there are multiple ways which we talked. One is the management console where we use the username and password with the along with the MFA if it is enabled, right? The second version is the second option is CLI, command line interface, where you have to use the access key ID and secret access key. Okay, so access key and secret access key, these are exactly equivalent to your username and password. Okay, but these are not plain username and password, or the readable username and password, some with the some 20 long characters. So you have to how to generate these access key and secret access key. We'll see it from the console here. So go back to the your user, go to the security credentials here, and click on create access key here. So here you, let's say this is for the command line interface. For now we have other options also. I understand. Next, and click on demo and click on create access key. So I have generated one already one. So this is the access key and secret access key, and keep in mind this access key and secret access key we can see only one. So you have to download this .csv file so that you can access it anytime whenever you need. But if you do not download this one, and if you do not save this secret access key at safe place, then if you do not remember this one, then, or if you forget this one, basically you cannot um, uh, or you cannot get this password again. The only option is you have to generate a new access keys altogether here. Okay, so if you see here some the recommendations from the AWS end, right, never store your access key in plain text or the code repository or in code, because if this, as I mentioned, this access key and secret access key exactly equivalent to your username and password, right? So indirectly what you're exposing here, you are exposing the your username and password only. It means you are giving, or someone can be accessible your username and password to the your AWS account, or indirectly someone can log into your AWS account, right? But through the CLI, not through the console, but through the CLI, right? That's where you do not share to anyone or do not save it in code repository so that others can access this one. If you are not using this, or when you are no longer needed this one, disable it or delete it. We will see how to do that. Once this demo is done, then we will do that. So this is what I was talking about right earlier. Enable the least privilege permissions. Okay, so we have this user, right? Let's say, let me go back to this cancel. We have this user, and what level of permissions you have assigned, right? Here we have given the full permissions, right? So do not assign the full permission, instead give the least privilege permissions. Let's say if it is a operations team or the database team, then give the minimum or least privilege permission, so that even though if it is exposed to other people, then they cannot do pretty much everything. They can do only the permissions assigned to the IAM user, right? So that's where you have to give the least privilege permissions here. And these access keys are rotate, you have to rotate this regularly, so that even though these are known to someone, they cannot get the next access keys again, right? So that's where the AWS suggestion is rotate these access keys regularly. Okay, so when you do the hands-on, right, please read about all these options, and in case of questions, please let me know. Okay, so I have downloaded this one, and
Hello, how can we rotate that keys?
okay, yeah. So let me go back to the user here. So what you have to do is you have to here you have to deactivate this one and create a new access keys here, right? You can create it two access keys within the user. If you see here, right, access key 1, access key 2. Okay, you can create within the same IAM user, you can create a two access keys here. What you have to do here, altogether you have to create a access key and create a one more access key and deactivate the old one. Okay, if
It
you
means
see
we
here,
need to manually rotate these keys.
right, yeah, for this one we do not have the auto one. You have to do the manual.
Is there an option any automatically rotate these keys?
No, not for the this access keys actually.
Okay,
Okay, but for the password we have, for the console password, right, we have seen that, right? So we can customize that and we can do that.
okay,
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 yeah.
thank you.
Okay, yeah, then once you have the access key and secret access, right, now you can see the access key ID here, but you cannot really see the secret access key, right? You see it is active. You can deactivate it as well, right? If you go to the this actions here, deactivate, right, or delete this one. So once you have the access key and secret access key, right, so I have the so this MSI installer, so you have to click on this one and download this MSI installer and just do the install to your Windows machine. This is a MSI installer, this AWS CLI to the Windows machine. Okay, if you're using a different OS version, then there will be a different commands, but I just put it for the Windows one. So once you install to your local, right, then what you have to type here is you have to type the AWS hyphen hyphen version. So if it is give you the response with the AWS CLI 2.0, then you're good, right? Then what you have to do now is you have to configure, or you have to use your AWS account to use, right? For that you have what you have to type AWS configure. Then it will ask you for the access key ID, right? This is where we have generated the our security credentials, right here, security credentials. So now, and even we have downloaded those access keys to our local, right? Now, if you see here, if you open this one, so these are the access key and secret access key. Basically, we have downloaded in a the Excel sheet here. So let me copy the access key. Okay, paste it here. Copy. Then it will ask for the secret access key, right? Then copy the secret access key. We copy this. So let me put it into the here. We copy from here. Okay. Now it will ask you for the default region name here. So let me put the so as I mentioned, this is the base region. So I'll just use the US East one default output format. I don't need anything. Okay. Now, if you do the AWS configure, then you provide the access key and secret access key, right? This is exactly equivalent to the you are logged into the your AWS account here from here. Okay. Now what I'll type is AWS S3 LS. LS is nothing but AWS. So this is the command you have to provide. The same way you go search for the S3 service and list the S3 service, right? This is the AWS S3 services list. So let me enter here. Let's wait for the response. Okay. Now if you see, there are the four AWS S3 services are there. Let me confirm that from the account, right? Let me go back to the account here and let me go to the S3 service here. Now go to the S3 here. Let's verify, do we have the really have the four S3 services here? Now you see there are four S3 buckets are we have here. Buckets is four. We can pull those S3 buckets from this one as well, right? Now let me create a one quickly and let's see whether it picks up from the that CLI or not. So there's some, it should have a unique name, so I'm just giving some random name there. Just create that. Right now we have the five buckets here. Now let's go back to the CLI. Now type again AWS S3 LS. Now you see there are five. So the new bucket is automatically picks up. So indirectly there are only the different way is we are accessing it from the CMD and we are accessing that from the console. The only that is the difference, right? You can make the, so to create S3 bucket there are some API call you have to do from here, but with the some syntax AWS S3 create, I think something here you have to do that, and you can automatically that comes up to here as well. You can do both ways, right? Now you are able to access your S3, your AWS account through the AWS management console or through the CLI as well. So let me delete this one to type your bucket name. Delete bucket. So we haven't talked about S3 in brief yet, but yeah, I'm just showing you that is very easy to demo. So okay, now it is it is in sync, right? Both the CLI and the management console are in sync. So well, you can do both the operations. So what you're doing is you are just listing the bucket through the UI, or you can list the buckets through the CLI as well, right? The one more way is the SDK. The SDK is what we can access uh, the um, the access key and secret are to access the AWS account programmatically, right? So this software development kit or SDK is supported by the many the code languages as of now, or Java, Python, the .NET, right? So you can integrate your AWS account with the, or you integrate programmatically, right? Using the access key and secret access key, that is a SDK, but that is more on the developer end. So if anyone are looking for the DevOps, not DevOps, developer associate certificate, that is the more important there. But that is it. So just think of like you can use the SDK also to access your AWS account programmatically. You can use SDK also. But for us, the management console and the CLI are the important for us. Any questions so far, anyone here?
Can you please just give me an overview for SDK?
SDK, okay. So
how can we connect? How can we like programmatically connect that AWS account or like that?
right. So now we have seen the CLI, right? So we have manually gone there and we did the AWS configure, then type the access key and secret access key here, right? And type the which region to access it and all. The same way these sorry, these steps can be configured through your code also, right? When we say code, let's say you want to access the S3 bucket from within your AWS account. So you cannot directly access that, right? For that, you have to log into your AWS account first. Then you can access the S3 bucket the way we did, right? So for logging in, you have to provide the access key and secret access key. So what you have to do, you have to program it. You have to program in such a way that you have to provide the access key and secret access key first. You get the access key, secret access key, and the region name first, right? Then you have to provide the bucket name to access. So until and unless you cannot log in, you cannot access the S3 bucket within the AWS account, right? So that is how you have to code, or you have to write, you have to program your code in such a way that first log in, then access this bucket and do the operation whatever you need programmatically. Okay, yeah. Any more questions, anyone?
No issue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe from your code, maybe you will be uploading the file to the S3 bucket later part of the time. Once you logged into your bucket and you access your bucket first.
The sync command, okay.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Okay, so let's see. So now we have talked about the users, user groups, and the policies, right? The one more thing is, so these four are important from the IAM perspective, and this is why we talked at the first day, right? Because you have to know how do you access your AWS account, right? Or you have to know like whom can you give permission, or what level of permission you can give, or how do you access your AWS account and all, or what are the permissions and how permissions work and all. That's where we have talked about the IAM at the first place, or today itself. So the roles is important here because these roles are so why do we use role first, right? So we will talk about that theory first. So these roles are the IAM roles are entities you can create and assign the specific permissions to allow, or the allow the trusted entities such as the any workforce identity and the application to perform actions in AWS. Okay, so you may not understand this term yet, but yeah, so think of like if you want to uh, um, or not you, maybe the two services, right? Let's say the S3 and EC2. The EC2 is a virtual machine and S3 is a object store. These two are the AWS services, right? If they want to communicate one to each other, right? And how do they communicate, right? The by default, the one service cannot talk to the other service by default within the AWS until and unless you have to give the right permissions, then only you can access. Okay, so now first let's understand. So how do we able to access, right? So from my CLI using this user, I am able to access to the AWS S3, right? How do I able to access, right? Because of these permissions, right? I have assigned these permission, then only I am able to access. Let's say, okay, let's remove this. Let's remove this S3 read also. Okay, can anyone guess what will happen now? So if I try to do from the CLI, right, the same operation, does anyone guess what will happen now?
No buckets are there.
Why? I
That
mean, what?
account is no permission right now.
Right. So no buckets. Not no buckets would be there. We do not have a right permissions to. So we will get something like access denied error here. Here you see an error occurred. Access denied. Buckets are there, but we do not have a right access here. Access denied. Right. So this is working because of we have the right permissions there. Right. So let me go back to that and assign the policy back. Add permission. Add permission. So this user. Let's see. Okay, now I have the administrator access. Let me go back and now you see it is accessible because of my permissions, right? Now what if two services needs to talk to each other, right? We cannot for each service we cannot attach the policy directly. So instead there is a IAM role concept. You have to create a role for EC2 and attach the permissions to that EC2. Let's say this EC2 this IAM role needs to access to S3 bucket and attach or create a role, attach the right permission, S3 permission, and attach that role to EC2. Now, what are the steps here, right? The step number one is create a IAM role. Okay. The step number 2 is attach the IAM policy to this role. In this example, IAM role policy is to access the S3 bucket. Okay. Let this EC2 instance assume the role, and you have to attach this role to EC2 instance. Now this EC2 instance, this is nothing but a one service, can access to other service because of this IAM role here. Okay. Any confusion anyone here, or you want me to repeat this?
Yes, can you repeat?
Okay. So by default, one service cannot talk to other service, right? Then some services definitely need access to other service. For example, this is a AWS or the EC2 instance service, right? This is a virtual machine. Let's say this virtual machine needs to talk to the let's say a S3 service, the other service, right? Think of like two different services needs to talk to one each other, right? How do you give right permissions to them? Then what you have to do is you have to create a role first and attach the right permission, then attach that policy that role to your one service. Then these two services can communicate with one each other because of the permission. The same way, the IAM user can communicate to the IAM user can communicate to the S3, right? From our example, right? This is because of the right permissions, right? So when we remove the policy or the permissions, then we are getting the access denied error, right? When we give the right permissions again, we are able to pull these list of S3 buckets here. The same way, what you have to do, you have to create a role, right? And attach the right permissions here, policies, then attach this role to your user, or not the user, to the your EC2 service here. Then you will be able to access this S3 bucket. Not only S3, any other service, if you want to communicate or access from this EC2, you have to give policies to your IAM role itself here. Okay, is it clear, or you want me to?
Yes, it's clear now. Thank you.
Okay. So the definition of the IAM role here is some AWS services will need to perform actions on your behalf, right? To do so, we will assign the permissions to AWS service with IAM roles, right? So basically, to communicate to different services within the AWS, the IAM role is useful here. So on your behalf, if you want to communicate to other services, then you have to create a role here.
It's applicable for all different types of role, like containers, like
Right. Yes. Yeah. For most of the services, we can
database,
attach the roles, right? And it will be applicable. Yes. The ECS Elastic Container Service, or the Lambda functions, or the EC2
database,
service. Right.
database.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay. But not all services are supported by the IAM roles, but most of them, wherever we need it, right? It is supported. Okay. What all supported, we will going forward, we will see wherever it is possible, right? So you think of like wherever you execute the code, right? Then you should have a permissions to your other services basically. Let's say so while running the DB connection, right? So DB connection may be secured in some one service, the secrets manager service, right? So while running your code, you need to pull up your connection string, right? So that time you have to connect your code to your secret manager service, the other service. That time the role is important. It should have the permissions at least.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, as of now, from this slide, you have to keep in mind, if you want to communicate, or if two services within the AWS can communicate using the IAM roles.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now there are two security tools within the AWS itself. I'll go back to the console here. Okay. And here one is the credential report here. This credential report are nothing but so if you download the credential report, right, this will give you the list of AWS IAM users within your AWS account. Okay, so I'll just okay, it is basically giving you the status of your IAM user, right? So you have the few IAM users. So how many IAM users you have within your AWS account? So this one we created today, right? So this is the year and when do you creation time, and there will be something when you have accessed it last time. The password last changed here. Access key one, and what services you have used, and this is basically, this is mainly for the auditing purpose. So if you want to see at one place how many users are there, and when did you create them, or when did you last use them, here you see here last used on the, yeah, just now, right? So it's in different time format, but yeah, we just used, right? So it'll give you basically this credential report. The main purpose of credential report is to give you an audit to your the IAM users, list of IAM users here. So here you can download this report, and this is mainly for the auditing of your IAM users here. So here it will be saying IAM users in this account and the status of their various credentials. So when did you rotate it, and all the information when you have lost access, or when you have rotated for the last time, or when you have created. Okay, so this is one of the so this is mainly for the auditing purpose. Okay. Now, one more is there is a access advisor. So how do you audit your services, or how do you audit your IAM users, right? There are two ways. One is credential report. The second one is access advisor here. So within the IAM user, click on IAM user, there is a access advisor. So this access advisor, what access advisor will do is, you have assigned a few permissions to the each user, right? Then what are the permissions they are using, right? So based on this usage pattern, you can review your the permissions here, or you can add the permission, or you can remove the permissions. Let's say you have added 10 different permissions here, maybe S3 permissions, EC2 permissions, and any other service permissions here, but they are only accessing the EC2 permission. They are never accessing the S3 permissions. So over period of time, you can verify this, and you can remove the S3 permissions if it is not at all needed, because they are not accessing at any point of time here. Okay, so this is how you can audit. Basically, this is main on the operations guys job. They can audit their the access or usage pattern of the EM user, and they can remove the permission over period of time if needed, actually. Okay, any questions here, anyone? So this is basically when there were these services were last accessed and all, you can verify this one. So if you want to check the usage pattern and remove the permission, or give the least privilege permissions, then this is the one of the option you can do that. You go to the access advisor and see the usage pattern here, and you can remove the permission over period of time. And the second one is the credential report here. You can download the report and how many users you have created, when they have last used the so if they are not using actively, then you can deactivate them, right? So let's say I'm not this is not applicable, so I'm not using this one, so I can go ahead and delete this user uh, if it is not being used, right? So but if I'm not using some users from past 1-2 years, then I can go ahead and delete that or deactivate that, right? So you can audit your AWS account using these two reports here. One is credential report, and second one is the access advisor here. Okay, any questions, anyone so far?
One, which report? Access advisor. What is that report?
Access advisor, this credential
Window.
report, yeah,
Okay.
credential report, you understood this one?
Yeah.
So this is giving you the list of the IAM users within your AWS account, and when they have created and when they have used and all, that audit report. Okay. The second one is access advisor within the IAM user here. Click on IAM user, go to the access advisor here. Access advisor,
Okay.
and if you have the multiple permissions assigned, so I have assigned here the administrator access, so I do not see the multiple accesses here. But if you give you the EC2 permissions or the S3 permissions, then you can only view the what permission they have leveraged over period of time here. So it is today. If I want to see the maybe last 10 days or 20 days, what permissions they want to they have access to recently, over period of time, then you can verify this. And using that usage pattern, you can add more permissions or remove permissions if it is not needed. If it is not being used, then there is no point to add the permissions, right? Extra permissions, we can remove that, right? So that level of audit we can use, we can do using the Access Advisor. Okay, any other questions, anyone? Okay, so can anyone tell me what is the region stands for?
It's nothing but geographical space.
Yeah, it is nothing but just a geographical area. Yes, or logical name you can say, or geographical area. Okay, so what is the availability zone?
It's a one or more discrete data centers, combination of one or more discrete data centers.
Yeah, that's right, Lalita. Okay, and the how many region within the region, how many availability zones can be there?
6.
Three minimum, max 6.
Right, it
6.
depends, it varies
It
actually,
depends.
Karthik. Okay, so minimum is 3, maximum is 6. So some the regions have the 3, at least 3. The maximum is 6. It varies. Some has the 4, and I haven't seen the 5, but yeah, some has the 4, 3, 6. So you can say 3 to 6 availability zones within the given region. It depends actually. So minimum is 3, maximum is 6. Okay, so the data center is again nothing but the where they have the servers, hardwares, and everything that AWS manages. Okay, what is the edge location being used for?
For cache.
Right.
Yeah.
The main purpose of the edge location is caching or low latency calls, right? We can do so. It will be cached to our nearest edge location, right? Then what is the user? IAM user. Can anyone tell me what is the IAM user is? So we can create the
It's
users,
nothing
right?
but the user created in AWS console. In
Right.
short, we can say.
Yeah, so these are nothing but the members of an organization, right? So you,
Yes.
me, we are the users. All of us are the users within the IAM user, right? So let me ask you this. So can we use the root account for the day-to-day activity, or what is the suggestion from the AWS?
No, we cannot use the root
Better
account. We can
don't
use the
use.
IAM.
Right. So we never use a root account in real time. Okay. Instead, we create a IAM users, right? And the AWS suggestion would be that the root user account, never use the root account anytime. Instead, create a IAM user and use that IAM user for the day-to-day activities, right? Now, what is the user group? User groups.
Nothing but
It's
suppose
similar.
if X is a user and that user is having some groups, we can say that user groups,
Right. So it is just a group of users. Okay.
group of users.
Right. So group of users can be, so the advantages would be we can manage the permissions very easily, right? Or we can give at group level, and all the users within the group can be inherited those same level of permission. So that is easy to manage, right? Instead of managing at the user level, we can manage at the group level permission. So that is easy to manage actually, right? So that's where we create a group and add, let's say you have the 5 users within the group. It's a developer group or database group or operations group or HR group, right? You create a HR group and assign the same level of permissions to all the groups within the uh, all uh, all all users within the HR. Add to the HR group and give the permissions at the group level, so that all the HR members get the same level of permissions from the group. Instead of managing at the each individual HR user level, manage at the group level. That is the advantage over the users group, users to user groups. Okay. Now, what is the policy for?
Policy is for providing permissions to the users.
Right. So policies are nothing but the permissions. So what level of permissions each IAM user should have, that is the we can assign using the policy. So does anyone remember the policy structure?
Effect, action, and
Effect,
resource.
resource,
Action and resource.
Right, right.
action.
Yeah, effect, action, and resource, right? So effect is allow or deny. The action is the API call or what actions we can perform within the resource type mentioned here, right? So this is the policy structure. So these policies are nothing but the permissions only. So let me ask you this: how can we protect our passwords? We talked about two different ways, right? How to protect the passwords?
With MFA,
Right. One is MFA. One more is
with
I guess it is CLI.
security software development something, and CLA also.
no, no, no. No, I'm talking about I'm not talking about how to access to the AWS. I'm just talking about how to protect our passwords, right? We talked about the customization of password, right? The 8 character, 10 character length, one uppercase, one lowercase, this one, right?
Stronger password is in.
Yeah, strong password policy, right? Right. So this is one way we can protect our passwords. Or the second way is the MFA. On top of the along with the username and password, we can give assign the MFA device on top of the along with the password, so that we can protect our IAM users here, right? Okay, so how to access the AWS account? What are the ways we can access?
3 ways are there.
Uh-huh.
Graphical mode, command line, and SDK.
Right, yeah, yeah. The first one is a console, the AWS management console, you can say. The second one is CLI, command line interface, and the SDK, software development kit. 3 ways, yes. So for the CLI to use into your local, what you have to do? First you
We
have to
have to
Get
generate the
access key.
access keys.
right. First you have to install the AWS CLI into your local first, right? Then you have to generate what you have to generate?
Access key.
Right, access key ID and secret access key. Okay. The two terms, these are equivalent to your username and password, but these are the access key ID and a secret access key. So access key ID and secret access key, same as the username and password. Through CLI, you can access to your AWS account, right? Right. Then, okay, so I have created a IAM user. Can I go ahead and give the full permissions to the IAM user? And what is the suggestion from the AWS side?
Least privilege.
Yeah, least privilege permission should be given, right? We
Yes.
always shouldn't give the full permissions to the AWS user basically. So always we have to give the least privilege permissions only. Okay. So when we say least privilege permissions, whatever required, give that permissions only. Okay, so that is one. And what is the role stands for anyone? Roles, IAM roles?
Suppose if AWS services will need to perform any actions on behalf, so that role will help us to do that.
Yeah, basically, yes. Yeah, if you want to, or two services needs to talk to each other, then the roles will be helpful here. The example we talked about EC2 to S3, right? So if EC2 wants to talk to S3 bucket, then this roles will be helpful here. Okay, so we talked about two audit or the security tools, right? IAM security tools where we can audit or the IAM usage pattern. What are those two here?
Credential report.
Yeah, credential report is one where we
And
can audit
advisory.
access. advisor, right?
Advisory. Yeah.
Access advisor, where you can check the usage pattern of each IAM user here. So this is at the user level. Okay, this credential report at the IAM whole AWS account IAM service level, right? Basically, this is the credential report at the account level. This access advisor at the individual user level here, within the user access advisor and usage pattern of that IAM user here. Right. So these are it. We talked about the um, we talked today, but along with this, please create a the AWS free tier account, right? And let me know in case of difficulty. Please let me know. So what I can tell you is, please create a the AWS account itself today itself, maybe, or whenever you get time. But yeah, do not or maybe so if you do not create it today or sometime tomorrow or maybe in day or two, you will start forgetting, because there are so many new terms coming up, or if you give if you wait for 2 more days on the next session, right? So there are so many new services coming up quickly, and new terminology will be coming up or adding up quickly. So you will not be correlate with one with each other. So the suggestion from my side is, please do whatever the we talked about some topics today. Please try to do the hands-on today itself, so that definitely you will be having questions or the issues while performing these hands-on. Then you can ping directly. If you do not do today, if you wait for few more days and do it, then you will be or mess up with the other topics, and you may not be getting full time here. So the exercise would be here: the create a AWS account first. Okay, we haven't created our uh, because as I already have an account, I haven't performed all the actions, but I have shown what are the important steps needs to be there. And do not worry, they will debit some amount and credit you back, maybe 5 rupees, I think, nowadays. So that is one thing. The create the free tier AWS account only. And while creating a AWS account, select the personal as a personal, okay, not the organization. Okay, then go through the this global infrastructure. I'll give you the link which I have shown from the demo. The regions, availability zones, data centers, and edge locations here. Then the in the IAM user, this is the first service we talked about within the AWS. Then we talked about the users, user groups, policies, and roles, right? Then the strong password policy and the MFA. Then the audit side, the access advisor and credential report. This is what we talked today at the high level. But please go through these topics. I'll provide you the some notes along with this deck, and uh, I'll provide you the recording as well. But in case of questions, please let me know. Please ping in the group chat, or you can ping me directly to my WhatsApp number. Okay. Any other questions? I see some Mohan. What is the question? Mohan. Multiple users with collection of similar policy permissions. Yeah, we can give same level of permissions to multiple users. There is no harm, or there is no restriction with that. You can create multiple users with the same policy there, Mohan.
Yeah, can you please provide the link for that AWS free tier uh, account creation?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, anyone?
Hello, I just wanted to know, like, in the examination, completely objective questions or any scenario-based questions also will appear?
Yeah, these are objective only, but those are like a scenario based questions. So there are few like direct questions. Okay, if you think about the cloud practitioner, right? Mostly
Hmm.
those are direct questions only.
Okay.
Okay, but if you go to the next level of certification, those are the scenario based questions. So I mean, you the which and the based on the scenario, which service will fit in. So you have to think about those services.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll share the notes and along with the recording. But in case of any other questions, please let me know, and I will connect on the next sessions.
We're doing the next session on Saturday, coming Saturday.